The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Our topic today is Advanced Knowledge Management for Global Support Organizations, Challenges, Risks, and Critical Success Factors. So good morning, good afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're joining from. My name is Jenny Hepler, and I'm the Business Development Manager for ComeAround in North America. At ComeAround, we are experts in knowledge-centered service and self-service knowledge tools. We are the only independent KCS verified knowledge management solution based in Microsoft technology. We make it easy to achieve results fast with data-driven intelligent knowledge and business intelligence along with a user-friendly design. Besides providing professional services and certifications by our team of experts, we also provide pre-populated knowledge which could drive your artificial intelligence, chat, and bot initiatives. Here is a slide with a few of the logos of our customers. Some housekeeping items. All phone lines will be muted. Please submit questions via chat, and questions will be answered at the end of the webinar as time permits. Our speakers today are Julie Moore, author and international speaker, Bill Pauley, Executive Vice President of the Americas, Sales and Strategic Alliances from ComeAround, and Brent Kellogg, Director, Sales and Business Development at ComeAround. Now I'll hand it over to Julie. I've personally known Julie for 15 years, and I know that every presentation she makes, whether it's in person or virtual, she knocks it out of the park. So no pressure there for you, Julie. With that said, I'd like to get things started and hand it over.
Well, hello, Jenny, and thank you so much for that introduction. You know, when you say 15 years, I start feeling a little bit old. So you and I are not a day over 29, even though we've known each other for 15 years. We'll just go with that. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am extremely happy to be here with all of you. When ComeAround approached me about writing a white paper related to global support organizations, I was quite excited about this as an opportunity to share my personal experiences of working with global support organizations, and in particular, the challenges that are faced, you know, from the complexity, high distribution of staff, you know, different customers and geographical locations that may have disparate systems, different tools, you know, this ability to support customers no matter what language they speak, what time zone that they're in. And I know from working with my customers that these challenges can be overcome with the right mindset, the right tools, and the right focus. So we're going to start there. We're going to talk about the challenges of providing support on a global basis. And for anybody that's in global support, you know that, you know, if you have a single location, you may have some of these challenges as well, but soon as you go global, these challenges are incredibly magnified in their complexity. The first one is really about collaboration between your different IT departments. In most global organizations, you're going to have one geographical region where you may have certain subject matter experts, and that requires you to be able to take in a call from a customer and then escalate that issue to one of these teams in a different geographical location. So this usually means that you have to have some sort of 24/7 operation. It's very common to develop a follow the sun model. But to really get to the point where you have this seamless integration, meaning a customer can call in through one point of contact and it seamlessly transitions into a different time zone, different region, these are the things that are significantly challenged. You have to have very clear defined roles and responsibilities. Obviously, a centralized tool is very critical in helping to overcome this challenge. But it's really about managing expectations across all of these different geographical regions. And that means a strong collaborative environment between your different subject matter expert groups. Another challenge is just the sheer complexity of the infrastructure. A lot of companies, when they expand into a global market, do so through mergers and acquisitions. So that often means that, let's say you have a geographical location in Brazil and versus something that may be in Europe. Just based upon the different geographical regions, you may have different technology that may be controlled by export law and things like that. So it's not always simple to just standardize on one common platform. A lot of times you're left with different infrastructure. And all that means is that the support gets that much more different or difficult. Different services, different tools, different infrastructure. And then once you try to roll out something new to that global organization, rolling out new services is a very complex initiative. And in many cases, because you can't just push it out to all of your geographical locations at one time, it often means for the support organization that they're supporting multiple versions of these services at the same time, which makes it even more complex. You have to know what the geographical region is, what the infrastructure is, what version of the service. And so that just adds an additional layer of complexity as it relates to the infrastructure that you're supporting. And I also know from my experience that when organizations transition, when they're moving from disparate teams across a large global footprint, and the view is, let's consolidate, let's move to a single point of contact, we'll simplify the environment, we'll standardize the services, and in many cases the goal is to see cost reduction in building that new support model. And my experience has been that you may get those economies of scales over time, and those benefits, the cost savings that you're looking for eventually will be there. But we don't do a good job of understanding the cost of that distributed model before you move to a single point of contact. So in many cases, as you begin restructuring to that global model, it will look on paper as it's more expensive than it is to have the distributed model. And it's mostly because once you do centralize, the costs become so much more visible. And because they're visible, that means you can then begin looking at ways to reduce those costs. So it's very common for this to be a challenge as you go through transition to a global model. But eventually you should get there where you get better economies of scale by moving to a global model. Another thing that is of a significant challenge to the global support organization is the increase in user demand. Now, you could make a case that this is for any support organization, but if you look at the complexity of more devices, people bringing their own devices into the workplace, and you magnify that by many different countries, many different languages, this is an extreme amount of additional workload for the support organization. And so you could come up with policies that say we don't support those applications because they're not on the approved list. But I don't know about you, I am hugely productive with mobile devices. They provide an agility in doing my job that I don't get from my desktop and those types of machines. So imagine supporting a global environment with all of these different devices. It adds a lot of demand on the support organization. And because our customers want to use their preferred channel, now we're also not just providing additional support, but now we're trying to provide that support in a way that's meaningful to the customers on a global scale. So that may mean that we're offering more channels to help manage that demand. And a lot of times when we look at self-service as a mechanism for helping to manage that demand, it's hard enough to build a self-service site for a company that's in one geographical location. But imagine trying to serve the needs in multiple different languages, with all these different products and services and infrastructure through one single self-service portal. And another thing that comes in here, and I think this is important, which can also lead to more user demand, is that problem diagnosis, trying to figure out what the root cause of a problem in a very complex infrastructure on a global scale can be very difficult. And so because of that, we often, it takes us longer to get to what caused the problem. It could be, just maybe one geographical location where the problem exists, but that collaboration and trying to do that diagnostics takes longer. So you're going to have more incidents occurring if the problem management process is not working as effectively as it can across that global footprint. Now, the support structure itself is also much more complex. Think about, let's say that you've got a single point of contact in a lower cost region of the globe, but your customers are in a different geographical location. You may be able to take their initial call through your single point of contact, but now if something has to go to the desktop, you have to have these technical resources that have the physical abilities to go and manage machines. So managing that as one entity there's a lot of additional complexity there. And our customers expect seamless management of issues, right? They don't care that they called one location and that somebody completely different is showing up at the desktop. The expectations from the customers are that all of that works as one entity. So it's difficult to manage those distributed staff across the geographical boundaries and culture and different processes and policies and still create that level of accountability that our customers are looking for. And of course, when we start thinking about things like multi-language support, I mean, many of the customers that I've worked with have said, look, English is our global language. We will standardize on that, and everybody is forced to use English when working with the support organization. But, there are many locations around the world where employers or when you're a student growing up, you don't have the opportunity to learn English. Many countries do make it compulsory that you learn English as you're going through school, but it's not consistent across the globe. So while you may say English is the company language, it doesn't necessarily play out that way. I've had a couple customers where they have geographical regions where they ended up building a support organization because no one would call in anymore because they couldn't speak English. So this adds greater complexity. And it's not just supporting the end users, but it's also the dissemination of knowledge. I might be able to read it in English, but I may not fully understand it until it's translated into my native language. And as soon as you do that, as soon as you translate something into another language, you now have two copies of it, one in English, one in, let's just say, Spanish. And keeping your staff trained and your end users' skill sets where they need to be. There's a lot of translation that has to occur, and it adds just another level of difficulty on a global scale. And one of the things that we have to get control of is as changes are made, we really have to have change control so that we're managing all of those versions in order to eliminate the risk of having something written in two different languages but having two different outcomes, right? We want, as it's being translated, for us still to maintain the accuracy of the information in the support knowledge. And, auto translation is getting so much more powerful. And, a lot of this is, especially as it relates to languages that have been translated for, a good 8 to 10 years. They are getting much better at translation, but not necessarily always, the technical terms. It's more of the conversational, translation that works really well. But when you start getting into company-specific terminology and things like that, the auto translation may not work as effectively as you'd like it to. Now, all of this, when I start thinking about all these complexities that we've covered so far, now imagine putting on top of that service level management, right? So a phone call comes into one geographical location and the timer starts for the end user, right? And their business day, 8 to 5, is in one time zone, but maybe you escalate it to a subject matter expert whose business day is completely different. So now we have to be able to set that timer as it relates to the customer perspective and manage it effectively to manage the expectation and deliver on the expectation to the customer. And it doesn't matter from the IT perspective who is solving it, where they're located. It all has to be managed as one service level management framework across the global entity. And this can be even more difficult if you don't have a standardized process for incident management or problem management. You know, you've got varying degrees of process maturity across your different geographical regions. One may be, you know, have been using a tool for a considerable amount of time and are managing SLAs very well, but you escalate a ticket to a different geographical region where they, you know, they have not been had SLAs established. So this, again, it's just it's the magnitude of the scale of the global organization is significant. Now, there are also a lot of risks related to going to a global entity for providing support. And you have to be able to manage that risk, but also manage the diversity of customers and support processes. Just being aware of what the risks are on a global scale will help the organization to navigate those more effectively. And I think one of the things that I see support organizations trying to do as they move to a global model and try to consolidate services and create greater consistency is that there's this overemphasis on perfection. Right? We're trying to design a new support organization that can handle all of these possible scenarios that, you know, everything that our heads can come up with, all the well, what happens if this occurs? And instead, we need to think more about designing something that's more flexible, that takes input as we're going through the process, like the changing needs of the business, and is able to adapt as needed. And so often we want to just start by building a simple support organization, you know, figuring it out, getting everything working, getting your tool working, getting the skill sets where you need it to get the lines of communication working effectively, and then build in additional capabilities as needed by any areas of weakness in supporting the business. And then, of course, it needs to be based upon continuous improvement, because I don't know any business today that's not in this rapid, you know, this agility and rapid change that we see in our industry today. So whatever we do build on a global scale has to be able to be agile and kind of mold into what the business needs at any given time. Another risk is the trust across borders. And I've seen this manifest itself in many different ways. Maybe you outsource level 1, but there's no trust there with that service level provider or that managed service provider. And so you only give them so much rights and privileges, and you don't allow them to do things behind the infrastructure. And you know what that essentially does is it hampers their ability to provide a really high quality support at level 1. That can exist not just with external service providers, but it can also exist in a multi-border company, right? We know what's going on in our geographical region, but as soon as we escalate something to another geographical region, we don't necessarily trust for that to happen. There isn't this established trust that they will own it and continue to move forward. So we really have to focus on establishing very strong trust-based relationships across those geographical borders so that the organization can very much work as one team in managing what our customers and manage to our customers' expectation. And a really important part of this is a feedback loop. And I've seen this with my customers that often there's one geographical region that's kind of the owner of everything, and they'll establish policies and practices that don't necessarily work across the geographical regions, but it's kind of like you have to do it our way. And that kind of breaks down the trust. You have to have this feedback loop that allows everybody to provide input into the changes that you create as that model adapts from end-to-end service delivery across those borders and your different customers. Really important for it to work, for everybody to work towards common goals. Now, obviously, with a lot of the recent passing of laws and regulations related to the protection of data, this becomes even more of a risk when you start talking about global management of data. We're already collecting large, massive amounts of data related to our customers because of all the different support channels that we offer. And managing that data across so many different devices and transactions and storage options that we have across these different geographical regions. Like, there are some countries that will not allow data related to their people that live in that and are citizens of that country, for their data to be stored on an American server, with Amazon. These are the types of laws and regulations that you have to think about when you're looking at a global footprint. It's not as simple as just, managing and coming up with data management practices that work for your main company headquarters. You have to understand globally all these different laws and regulations, and in many cases some countries have much harsher penalties for the inappropriate storage or use of customer data. And so you're talking about protecting that data and managing that data on a global scale. There's a significant amount of risk of not doing things correctly across those borders. Now, any support organization can struggle with multiple sources of knowledge, right? We have our subject matter experts, they have their wiki, and then we have the service desk, we have people taping little documents all over their desktop. This is not an uncommon problem, but when we put this on the global scale, and you think about how all of these pockets of knowledge exist out there that are very beneficial to help solving issues from our customers end to end. But now when you talk about trying to bring that into one location, cleaning it up, there's a lot of wasted effort in doing so with very limited benefits. So when we talk about, really being able to use and leverage that knowledge on a global basis, this is a significant risk to organizations, that the efforts here be applied in a way that you get the benefits of that knowledge, but you also eliminate the risks associated with the multiple sources of knowledge. And then when we start thinking about things like visibility, right? Let's say I translate something into Spanish that's going to be used in Colombia, but it's only applicable, we modify that knowledge article because in Colombia we have a different infrastructure. So I only want my support staff in Colombia to be able to view that knowledge article. It's not just multiple sources of knowledge, it's also managing who has the rights and privileges to access that knowledge on a global scale. And I think another risk is that we often go into establishing a global support entity and we underestimate that complexity. The scale of global versus regional is not something to underestimate. There's going to be, as you move forward with a global model, a lot of process delays, lack of understanding between the teams or trust that cause delays as it relates to serving your customers. And I think another really important part of managing this risk is having a clear understanding of all of those partnerships, but their dependencies as well. Because I mean, in one geographical region, you could have the entire support organization's been outsourced, and in another, it's owned all internally, right? These different partnerships that exist in all of the different geographical regions add another level of complexity to managing the entire value chain such that you are delivering effective support to your customers, as an outcome. And obviously we would like to standardize wherever appropriate, but as we talked about in the challenges, this can be a significant challenge to standardize on products and services on a global scale. So given our challenges and understanding the risks related to a global support organization, there are some critical success factors that can help drive success on a global scale. Now, clearly, best practices are there for a reason. We look at service management, we look at knowledge management, and there are frameworks and methodologies out there that can help create consistency across those geographical regions, and it's why they exist. If I have 2, 3, 5, 10 locations and we're all using the same best practice methodologies, we're more likely to transition to this seamless delivery model than we would if we didn't have a common focus through best practices. The other thing that this does is it helps us to focus on the outcome. It gets us all on the same page as to what is it that we are really trying to deliver. It doesn't become us against them. This is our common objective, and we're all working toward that using these best practice methodologies. Obviously, the goal is to reduce the friction on a global scale of how the support organization works across all the things that we identified within the challenges and risks. So one really important critical success factor is investing in training and skill development. And I know this may seem like something very logical. It doesn't matter if we're global or not, we're going to want to have the right people with the right skills. But when we start talking about all the different complexities related to infrastructure, different products and services, different mobile devices, this means that training and skill development become even more important, right? We're not just having subject matter experts transfer knowledge to the single point of contact. We're doing this on a global scale. So for us to be effective in that end-to-end service delivery, we need to know who knows what, transfer knowledge across borders so that everybody has a common understanding of the products and services that are being provided, and they have the right level of skills to make a difference. We also, because of the complexity of a global scale, staff, it's not just the products and services that they need to know. They need to know the customers, the locations, and have a good working knowledge of the internal workings of the company. Because a lot of times it becomes you have to know the right person to get something done. And so that kind of training needs to be standardized across the board so that we have that ability to serve the customer effectively. Clearly identifying and investing in some sort of virtual training platform, a communication platform is a requirement to make this work effectively. I mean, we have all these different types of training today, but the learning bursts, being able to get knowledge to do your job at your desktop, doesn't matter where you are on a global scale, these things can be very beneficial to helping to transfer the knowledge and develop the skills and the staff as required to serve a global community. Another really important critical success factor is getting your hands around a global knowledge management framework. And I know that's pretty much the topic of this webinar, but having an idea of what institutional knowledge is important, how to capture it, and then make it accessible to the global support organization in a way that allows us to use that knowledge. This needs to be at the core of designing a global support entity. You need to be able to capture it. Doesn't matter where the call comes in or where that call goes across those geographical regions. Everybody needs to be on board that capturing and maintaining that knowledge real time while you're working with the customers and then making it available as quickly as possible to the global support organization and maybe even to customers. It's going to help make your support model work even more effectively. And so this needs to be at the core of what your focus is on creating a global organization. And that knowledge, if we're doing this successfully across all those different touch points, across all those different support channels, we are going to be able to make informed decisions, and we're also going to be able to identify improvements for our customers and our products and services. And eventually this leads to incredibly powerful information around how to innovate as the business is agile and changing. The ability for the IT organization to continue to evolve and serve the customers effectively. We also as a critical success factor here, we need to build a usable customer portal. And I have seen so many examples of these that look like they're from the 1980s, where you click on the home page and we think by putting as much information on the first page, we're doing a service to our customers. I mean, Google is a popular search engine for a reason. It's a box. You type something in and it gives you usable information in return. So we need a customer portal that is in the customer's preferred language, that's developed with a simple interface with the customer's needs in mind, that's available 24/7. And if we can tie that to our global knowledge management framework, customers will be able to get up-to-date, relevant information anytime they need it. So I think this is a major area of improvement of building something that works for our customers. It's either no clicks or one click is what I like to say. No clicks meaning information that I need, like, these are my open tickets, this is the status of my current call, whatever that is, something that I can just read quickly that gives me, with no clicks, information that's going to be valuable, or one click. When you start making your customers click 3 or 4 times to get to something relevant, the design is not what it should be. And when you're talking about making a difference by providing 24/7 support through a self-service site, one click or no click is the only option that's going to create the success for your customers. It's also important that, remember, our challenge is establishing trust across these geographical regions, and that trust is built in both formal and informal communication across channels. They always say communicate, communicate, communicate. That can really help an organization to work more effectively, and this is only magnified on a global scale. We want to establish and maintain that trust. To do that, communication is required. We want to make an investment in a virtual meeting platform, something that includes both voice and video. You know as well as I do, when you see someone talking, you get so much more information than what you hear in their voice. So face-to-face meetings across those geographical borders is possible by using these virtual meeting platforms, and incredibly important for establishing the trust. In addition to that, the teams themselves need tools that help them to work more effectively across those geographical borders, such as chat or some sort of channel that allows them to have both formal and informal communication. Now, this is, I think, probably the most important to our customers. From their perspective, all support channels should be managed as one. So it doesn't matter if they initially send in an email. When they call in to check up on a status of something, they expect the person that they call to know the entire history. So from the customer's perspective, it needs to be managed as one. It's also incredibly beneficial to the support organization to have that unified view of the customer experience. That type of information across all of the support channels, unifying our process, our tools, and our knowledge is only going to help us to better understand how to serve our customers. And that's not always easy to do, especially if we have different tools or systems in these different geographical regions that don't necessarily share information, or if we have information that's in 2 different locations that isn't potentially accurate in one of those locations. So having a unified support channel is really important, especially to our customers. So that's really kind of my view of what it takes to be successful with a global support entity, and I hope you guys found that information valuable. I am now going to hand this presentation over to Bill Pauley, the VP of the Americas Sales and Strategic Alliances at ComAround, to speak about establishing that global knowledge management framework. Bill, over to you.
Thanks again, Julie, and my personal welcome to everyone on the call today. And there's no question from Julie's presentation today that the challenges of a global IT organization are growing in scope and again, more complexity, and that support will really need to focus and require change in order to meet these challenges. While our goal is to simplify the transition from the complex, and it becomes to simplify really the whole idea of moving to transformational support, which is what we're talking about. So at Come Around, obviously, we focus on knowledge management and view that as a centerpiece to helping customers achieve a lot of these transition and transformations. What you see here is an example of one customer who came to us with a very, very important aspect of moving from or shifting left from a call center, a call-based support network, and really driving self-service adoption. And as you can see, they're located in more than 150 countries. I think we're supporting more than 35 languages that they deliver knowledge to. And certainly from a goal perspective, one of the things everyone on this call is interested in is results. And I think we see here that they've shifted self-service, and as of this year, or late last year, have actually reduced the total number of calls, and most importantly, shifted left, where now the self-service achievement of solving a user issue surpasses the number of calls and manned interactions that they're going through. So this is a good example of where Come Around plays. But at Come Around, we focus on even more than this. So certainly achieving the 50% number was great, but we're really focusing as well on making knowledge available to where people work and the language that's preferred. Certainly, as Julie mentioned earlier, English is the primary language of support in all countries, but as users get involved, it's certainly nice to have the opportunity to pick the language of choice to view knowledge articles and to view information about company policies and procedures. At Come Around, we also focus on rewarding support for how well they share information and not necessarily for what they know. And this gets back to sort of the feedback loop that we talked about earlier in Julie's presentation, where we actually see not only a feedback loop of what's working well for end users, but through methodologies like KCS, we support that active, use, flag, fix, or add to start to break down some of those barriers of trust that Julie mentioned earlier as well. And also, it's very important to empower new tools. The complexity of the new technology is starting to be tested by many of you on the phone today, so that we're seeing things like video components of knowledge, bot technology, intelligent search, mobile and messaging on phones, and of course, artificial intelligence. All of these new tool sets are starting to lead us as a company in knowledge management to beginning more and more predictive support, so that we can look at high use and adoption and start to trace the number of transactions and the things that occur in a 24/7 basis, so we can be more predictive in the way that we provide support and the way that we deliver knowledge. So we're going to have a demonstration here to talk a little bit about two of the main topics that we've talked about as challenges for a global support organization. And I'd like to, at this point, turn it over to my colleague, Brent Kellogg, who'll take the presentation from here.
All right, thank you so much, Bill. I'll be pulling up a demo here that we can take a look at. And this is going to be a very quick and high-level look at Come Around Knowledge, which is our SaaS-based KM platform. And certainly, if you would like to see a more granular look at our capabilities, please reach out to us, and we'd be happy to align some time to talk with you directly and show you more about what Come Around Knowledge is all about. But at a high level, really, we're looking at a portal interface. It's a place where employees and customers can go one-stop shop to get access to important knowledge and be able to get access as well to other service and support assets. This is a one interface that we provide. We also have a little cleaner interface, is more usable. A good use case would be for self-service, where you have tiles and a more prominent search field here at the top. This can be presented in many different languages based upon geo. So with employees in different languages based on login, they would be able to see this interface in Spanish, French, German, many other languages, based on where they're coming in to the system from. We're also able to access other support and ITSM assets. This is, to Julie's point, kind of one-stop shopping. So from here, going out and being able to see your service orders or open tickets and so forth, so they're not having to go to multiple places in order to access that type of information. The design is responsive, and so here I've reduced the size of the browser down to show that you can access this from smartphones, from tablets, and so forth as well. And another important point is that you need to provide access into the knowledge portal from where your employees or customers are working. Where are they at? So we also have Android apps, iOS apps, and Windows 10 applications. So when they're out in the field or on their handheld devices, they can get into the knowledge base directly there from an app, as well as a integration we have with Microsoft Teams. So this is becoming more and more common a collaboration application and channel within companies, and we have CommRound knowledge embedded directly inside of Teams, so that as users are doing their work day to day, with a click they can get direct access into a filtered view of the knowledge base based on their single sign-on profile. So they could see different views of content based on that single sign-on. So I think at this point, it'd be really good to kind of jump in, take a look at interacting with the application. And it is just so important to have a search that is forgiving and easy to use, because a good search is going to promote adoption and trust within the knowledge management platform. So for instance, if we were to start to put a search in here, you can see that it's pre-populating and giving us recommendations on what others have searched for, because this is self-learning, but it also provides kind of a Google-like experience there. If we were to go in and put a search string in, and we'll search on how do I log in to Office 365, and the point I'm trying to make here is this is very forgiving in terms of understanding intent, even with some pretty bad spelling errors. So the search engine is asking us, how do I log into Office 365? And in fact, that is what I'm looking for. And we can see that our content is rated high here within the search results. So we go in, we're able to then view the content. We're able to put video content in as well. So from an authoring perspective, our tool has a video editor, and within seconds, an agent or knowledge worker can add video assets to any article and publish them within just moments. I also wanted to point out the ability for translation. So here we have the English version that we're looking at, but also we have a German version. And if you wanted to add other language versions, with a click, you're able to go in, and here we can add French or traditional Chinese or many others. But just to show just the ease with which you can add localized versions of content there. So as a next step, I wanted to just really quickly show the new bot demo that we have put together. It's a pretty slick tool. We're working with a company called Wiseline on this bot, and I'm going to access it via my phone here. So I will bring my phone up as soon as I can log in here, just to show you a quick example of the power of bots, and especially in terms of providing access to the knowledge base from a mobile device in a conversational way, which is just how many users, people out there are getting more acclimated to finding information. So we'll just do a quick search. I think I'll do one that's more kind of an HR based. So let's do something like, can I Maybe can I wear jeans at work? Let's try that. And so this is going into the bot and should be coming back and providing us, so it's wanting a little bit more information. So let's say dress code. And it will be going out and bringing relevant content that we can preview. Now this will be accessing, so there we have an article. This is accessing the ComAround knowledge base. The user can then go in and view the content, and should they choose, they can also look at it in many other languages. So let's assume our user here looking at the employee dress code would like to see it in any one of over 100 additional languages. So we'll take Chinese traditional, and just as easy as that, the article will be translated into their language of choice. Again, really addressing that global audience and the need to see information in their preferred language. So one more point to note here is the ability for voice input. So in addition to using your thumbs to type in through the bot on a mobile device, you're also able to use voice input and really engage in a conversational way with the bot through that channel as well. So that was a very quick look at our demo. Again, we've shown just a very small slice here of what our capabilities are, and we'd love to show you more. So please get in touch with us, and we'd be happy to show you a much deeper demo. But at this point, I guess we'd like to open it up to any questions, and I will turn it back over to Jenny. And so Jenny.
Thank you, Brent. So we just wanted to open it up and find out if there's any questions or comments that you have at this time. You can type those into the chat. Okay, I don't see any questions at the moment, so I'd like to close the webinar and say thank you all for attending. You'll all be receiving a complimentary copy of a white paper by Julie Moore on this webinar topic today, and you'll also receive an invitation to a specialized ComAround knowledge demo. So I'd like to thank you all for attending and have a great day.